Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our webinar on data storytelling in Tableau. My name is Karen Rajat. I'm Unilytics Marketing Director, and presenting today will be Huey Colo, Unilytics District Sales Manager. In this webinar, you'll learn why data storytelling is a vital skill that every company should be using. Huey will take you through the 8 pillars of great data storytelling. Then he'll demonstrate how to create a compelling data story using Tableau Data Story Points. Before I get started, I would like to tell you a short story about Unilytics for those of you who are not familiar with our company. Unilytics has been in the business intelligence and analytics space since 2001. Our focus has been primarily on Tableau since 2013. We're both a premier Tableau reseller and a certified service provider. We offer a full range of Tableau services like dashboard creation, Tableau training, data preparation, which includes ETL work and data warehousing solutions, as well as Tableau server implementation and governance. Unilytics has helped over 900 customers across North America from a broad range of industries, as you can see from all the logos of our customers displayed. We help our customers extract meaning from their data so that they can make critical business decisions based on knowledge. Now that you know a bit about Unilytics' story, I just have a couple of items before I pass things over to Huey. There will be a question and answer period at the end of the webinar. Just type your questions in the panel at the top right of your screen. And secondly, there will be a recording of the webinar available on our website. So I will now pass things over to Huey, who will dazzle you with his data storytelling presentation.
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. Whether it's a Mother Goose nursery rhyme, one of Aesop's many fables, or Dr. Seuss' whimsical tales, we have all heard and grew up with a variety of stories throughout our lives. They all have commonalities to them. There's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. Some more funny or scarier than others, but they all take us through a journey, and in the end, we learn something. The same can be said when we try and tell a story using data. We need to be good data storytellers to clearly and concisely convey our stories. This applies to all industries, profit and non-profit alike. There's a lot of variety and complexity in what we do and what you do. And oftentimes, technical and behind the scenes requires familiarity with the technology and a long attention span to grasp. So with this in mind, we wanted to share with you today our 8 pillars of great storytelling. Beginning with a question, end with an insight, tell a compelling story, explain with visuals, narrate with words, be honest and credible, be clear and concise, know and cater to your audience, and last, provide context. So let's go over each individually, and in the end, we'll set up a story together using Tableau so that you can see how that would all look like. Before jumping into that, though, I wanted to share with you just a quick insight over the fact that we ourselves utilize these pillars when we're looking at developing dashboards, when we're looking at developing our own stories. And what we do is we created our own methodology that we call the UD3. And that goes into all those steps, applying all the different pillars so that we go from conception to visualization to finalization of whatever dashboard or storyline that we're trying to create and show to people. So let's get started. First, start with a question. What's your story's purpose? What is your audience going to learn? Before you start to build your story, take some time to think about the purpose of your story and what you want the viewer's journey to be. Is it a call to action? Is it a simple narrative, or are you presenting a case? If you're presenting a case, decide whether you want to present data points to lead up to a conclusion at the end, or start with a conclusion, then show the supporting data points. The latter approach works very well for a busy audience. So if you're in the C-suite, you would prefer that. The former is best for analysts and those that really like to go deep into the data. A good way to get started is by sketching out your story first on paper or on a whiteboard, or whichever way works for you, so that you can quickly identify problems with your sequence. Number 2, end with an insight. If we can't learn something useful from the data, the story isn't worth telling. Whether it's a yearly projection or a weekly report, if you're building a story around it, it needs to communicate something to your audience. Whether that something is insight into how your business is doing, good or bad, how you see your company moving forward, where you stack against your competitors, etc. You need to make sure that something has been gained at the end of it all. Number 3, know and cater to your audience. If you're online with us right now listening to this webinar, it's because this topic is of interest to you. And you're looking for a way to enhance your own storytelling using data, using Tableau. So, with that, then the question becomes, what's the interest of the people that you're creating this for? What are their goals? Do they want all the details, or do they just want a high-level summary? You need to know your audience, and you want to know what's important to them. That way, you're able to ask, the questions that answer the questions that need to be answered. Number 4, you want to tell a compelling story. People remember stories, not data. So you want to take them on your journey. So whatever insights or call to action you want to share with your audience, the way you present your story will help them remember. Keep in mind that you're not building an operational dashboard. You're walking people through what you want them to understand and what you want them to remember in an interactive data story. So tell a compelling story. Number 5, explain with visuals, narrate with words. People understand metrics, trends, and patterns much better with visuals. So a visual like this is very telling. It has, it's very clear and simple, but you can add a lot more depth into it if you're able to walk through what this visual is telling us and why we should care, right? So the 4 metrics used to calculate autonomous vehicles readiness index, straightforward, easy to understand. Why do you care? Where does Canada stand in this? So take that in mind. Number 6, context is king. If you're not familiar with The Wizard of Oz, this is just a dark humor cartoon on a webinar, right? So you want to be able to bring up the audience and their needs. So again, I can't stress that out enough. When you're creating a story and taking people through your journey, your data, and your visuals, it all must be framed within the context that's relevant to your audience. So depending on what your story is about, you may be looking to compare metrics over time or to industry benchmarks. So with that, your numbers and facts, without that context in mind, are going to be meaningless, and they're not going to be relating to your audience. So you're going to be losing them. Number 7, you want to be clear and concise, right? So what that means really is you want to remove everything that is not part of your story. If it's not relevant, save any other bits for another time, right? Because it's not adding context to it. It's not adding anything that's relevant. Keep it simple. A common error is trying to cram too many views and dashboards into a single story. That's not best practice. The result of that is going to be too many points for your viewers to take in, and you're going to lose them. If the clarity of each of your story points is not clear, which is also a very important step, you want to take a step back and consider your story from the perspective of someone who's never seen it. If you haven't seen it before and you're just filling in with a lot of information, it's not going to resonate. Every element should serve a purpose. So if you're bringing in captions, titles, legends, or grid lines, and those aren't necessary for what you're trying to do, for what you're trying to show, get rid of them. And lastly, be honest and credible. Your audience, whoever it is that you're presenting a data story to, they value honesty. So whether you're about to lie down some terrible sales projections, some project losses, some staff turnover, don't sugarcoat the negatives, and don't mislead with fraction data. And that's it. I mean, those are the 8 pillars for, well, those are the 8 great pillars for storytelling. But like many other stories, there's always a bit of a twist. And the twist here, really, from my side, is that I have a bonus tip for you because we're dealing with data, because we're dealing with visuals. And that's going to be plan for fast load times, right? What that means is the most wonderful story in the world won't have much of an impact if it takes too long to load. Once it's published, if it's just spinning its wheels, if it's just taking time to get processed, people are going to find it frustrating and they're going to leave. Part of the issue sometimes is filtering, right? It's a common culprit for slow load times. And I mean, you've seen in Tableau dashboards that they can be very effective in restricting data or the amount of data being analyzed, but they also oftentimes impact your query performance. So you want to be mindful of that in relation to the story that you're trying to convey. And this time it is it. So we're really done. Those are our storytelling pillars. So with that in mind, let's tell a story using Tableau and see if we can apply what I just talked about, what we just went through together, to make sure that it is clear. When we go through that, when we talk about storytelling, there's different ways to tell a story. There's 7 in particular that we've found that we understand to be 7 different data story types. And when you use the story feature, you're building a sequence of points. Each point contains either a view, a dashboard, or sometimes even just text. Some stories show the same view throughout the story, for example, just with text annotations and different filters applied to different points to support the arc narrative. So what I'm going to, so let's just go through these just so you can see what we have. So a very first one is change over time. Right, so this brings the type of discussion of why did this happen, or why does it keep happening? What can we do to prevent or make this happen that we're looking to do? The other one is a drill down, right? So why is this person or place or thing different? How does the performance of this person or this place or this thing compare? Zoom out. How does something you care about compare to the bigger picture? What effect does one area have on the bigger picture? Contrast. Why are these items different? How can we make A perform like B? Which areas should we focus on and which areas are doing fine? And then we have things like intersections, right? So what causes these shifts? Are these shifts good or bad? How do these shifts affect other aspects of our plan, of our goals? You have things like, you can tell a story using factors. Is there a particular category we should focus on more or less? How much do these items affect the metric we care about? And then lastly, outliers. Why is this item different? Why is this thing up here where the other one is all the way down? So having gone through the different story types, you can use one or other or a combination of them. There's no particular restriction. It really more comes down to how do you want to convey that message, and how does that apply in relation to how you're using your visuals. So let's take a look at Tableau now, because here you can see, so what I'm using really, this is the Superstore data. And the reason I'm using this is that, a lot of you, if not most of you, has seen this data that's been used throughout various demos. And when you get Tableau, you have access to the Superstore data as part of the package that comes with the Tableau desktop environment. So it's easier to relate. With that in mind, really, the story that I want to tell here is my manager is asking me, are we losing money on some deals? I see a lot of, colors here that are not the dark blue that it's indicating that we're doing well everywhere. So my mission, the story I want to tell is, why are we losing money on some deals? So I want to walk through that process with you and see if, as we go through this, that the story makes sense and that I cover the interest from my manager in terms of showing him where the culprits are and what the issues are. So let's create a story. So you'll see that, with Tableau, we can create stories just by clicking at the bottom here. The same way that we do with dashboards where we drag and drop things, we can drag them over. In this case, my story, my sequence of events really is, I want to try to figure out, first of all, let's look at our sales map, which same thing that you had seen before. I want to bring some context as to why I'm talking about this to him. So I'm going to be looking at that. And so I'm going to leave that alone. This is good. Nothing changes there. So I'm just going to add a title and say that, overall sales are strong. There's nothing much to it. I mean, we seem to be doing okay. We seem to be relatively profitable. But then let's go in depth into this. Let's look at the different categories in different regions to see if we can identify the ones that are giving us problems. So I'm going to drag this down here. So we have our different categories, and so, or segments, I should say. We have our furniture, office supplies, and technology, and then we have our different regions. So we can tackle two items with one visual. So we're minimizing the impact on the audience. And again, here my question is, so yes, we're profitable. I don't particularly care about this part. My focus is to understand where are we losing money. So I'm going to say zero profit. And now the image changes completely. Because what we can see here is that we are losing money on every different segment, but in particular, furniture throughout all different regions seems to be the one that's the most affected. We don't seem to be having issues with office supplies on the south or on the west side. So that's a good thing. So I'm just going to add a little caption here again, just saying all regions have losses. Central is worse. So I can have that in the title, which is very self-explanatory, or if somebody doesn't read that because you're having to scroll on this, I'm just going to drag some text. And I can say the exact same thing. I can say that all segments and regions have losses. However, central region and furniture particular have issues. Why is this? So as I'm adding the visual here, I'm guiding my manager to the process just to make sure that he can really focus on what I want him to focus. So we've answered that. We've looked at, we understand that the different regions and the different segments do have some issues, some more than others. So let's bring another visual to it. And this time, really, I want to understand who are these clients that are related to those issues. So I'm going to bring in this view. And again, just to recap, these are this is a dashboard that I built already, and really all I'm doing is I'm setting it all up together to be able to convey that story. So now, again, I brought in my customers. I have all those details here. We can still hover over, we can still see the details. And if we look here, even though we have large amount of sales with Sean Miller, we're not making any money with him. And again, if I remove profit from the equation here and focus entirely on the clients where we're losing money, Sean may be up top, but right away, Cindy Stewart here seems to be the darkest color, and our gross margin is negative 116%. That's that's a crazy number. So I'm going to bring this to his attention. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little note here and say, well, I'm not going to say "Ho to humanity." I guess that wouldn't resonate with my manager so well. So I'm going to delete that and say, this doesn't make sense. Just going to delete this part. And then I'm going to move this here. And again, in terms of context, it depends really on what it is that you're trying to say. But in my case, I'm looking at all these numbers, and this minus 116%, it doesn't make sense. How is it that we're losing money on top of even all our margin and everything, right? So with that, I'm going to say, do we have too many bad customers? Is that it? Is that the problem? Well, customers are a thing, but then we have to look in relation to our salespeople. So let's create another one. So with that, we're going to bring in our sales reps, right? So I'm going to bring them all here together. I'm going to do the same thing as before. Well, I'm going to leave that here for a moment because I'm discovering a little bit something quite obvious, which is that as we look at our gross margin without me even having to touch profit, I can identify that there's one sales rep in particular that we have issues with, and that's Kelly Williams. Kelly's sales are okay, but the gross margin is just, it's terrible. So my question here then becomes, the thing that I want to ask is, is Kelly discounting too much, or why are Kelly's sales so low? So I'm just going to say discounting. Yeah, because we can see that the gross margin here is low. So is she discounting too much? So I'm going to move this here. So again, this brings the attention right away. I mean, it's obvious to see with the color, but if I'm trying to show that, then we're good with that. And I'm going to say, so with this one, what are our sales reps selling? So we're figuring something out here. We're getting somewhere. So I have this. I'm going to again bring something else, and I'm going to try to look at, let's look at our discounts. I created a little viz for this. I'm going to drag this over, and you can see here that the different categories are marked by the different symbols. So we have circles for furniture, squares for office supplies, and then the triangles for technology. And the different reps are itemized by the different colors. And the discounts are sized. So we can see here that Kelly's Williams 25%, but then she is the only one here that has a 30% discount, and the profit numbers are terrible. So again, I can either put a mark, point, an area, but in this case, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to say affirmatively that Kelly is discounting too much. And I'm going to drag this up here so that your eye can right away go and you understand that Kelly is discounting too much. So I'm going to title this are discounts too high? which we can obviously see that they are, but all reps are discounting. So we've identified that. So we know now that Kelly, her sales numbers our gross margin is low. She is discounting a lot. But is this a continuous problem? Has this been happening for a long time? So I'm going to bring in my discounts by sales reps, because again, I spent the time doing the research, the review here to understand this. So bringing this brings me information over a 4-year period. And what I can see here, really, what's very clear is that for over the last 4 years, Kelly has continuously been the highest discounter from all 4 reps, right? And I mean, so in a situation like this, if I'm sending this to my manager, I'm asking, what is Kelly doing? I don't even know. I mean, what's with all these discounts over all this time, right? I mean, we obviously are losing a lot of money. If you look at everybody else, they're way below that threshold. So that then walks us through all this story. And then lastly, really, we can do we can add a section to say, what actions can we take? Here you can, if you have an image that you want to bring, you can do that. But in my case, really, I'm just dragging a text to add, because all I want to bring to my manager's attention is a few options. So possible options for this, we can obviously speak with Kelly, speak with Kelly's manager, cap all discounts do we have to do something else? Like we don't know, right? So that's not my job. That's not what my decision. So all I'm doing in this case is putting some options on the table. And again, you don't have to necessarily drag this text to add to it. You can create a visual and then bring this over. But with this done, we have our story completed. We can share this inside of Tableau Online or Server, or send as a package workbook. But then as we go through this, when you're sharing this with somebody, you are now basically guiding them along the journey. Overall sales are strong. All regions have losses, but obviously Central is terrible. Do we have too many bad clients? We can identify that what our sales reps are selling. We can see what our discounts are. Everybody discounts, but some more than others. Kelly obviously has an issue. What are our options? What can we do? And that's it.